Thanks for joining me for the instructional video for week 20. Let's go over your objectives. For your language objective for this week, we're going to go back and review some time and sequence words. So this is an objective that we've already covered in math. This is a good time to review and identify any problem areas or areas where your child may struggle with this and take some additional time to incorporate time words and sequence words into your vocabulary this week. So here's some ideas for doing so. Different time words are things like Monday, this afternoon, in 5 minutes. All of those count as time words. And sequence words are things like before, after, next, last, second, seventh, eighth, things like that. And activity ideas, if back in week 18, you created a list for the cognitive activity. So you made a list of errands to run or a schedule for the day or something like that. You can go back and use that list, talk about it with your child, and discuss it using sequence words. What did we do first? Then what happened next? Where did we go after that? All of which use time and sequence words. It's a great opportunity for that. You can also make a line up your child's toy cars, stuffed animals, dolls, and then ask them which is first in line. Then ask which is third in line. You may want to do it in order at first, second, third, fourth, until they've really gotten the hang of those ordinal numbers, and then mix it up. Go from asking them which one is second in line to which one is eighth in line. Review what day of the week it is each morning and talk about what you're going to do that day and at what time. So even though they may not know what 2 o'clock in the afternoon exactly means or when precisely that is, or maybe how to read it from the clock necessarily, you still want to begin incorporating this vocabulary. This is how they learn this stuff, is by context. And so you could say something like, this afternoon we're going to go on a walk to the park, or you could be very specific and say at 2 o'clock we're going to go visit grandma. You can also talk about, this is another great thing to do, get in the habit of talking about one thing that you did yesterday and one thing that you're going to do tomorrow, so you incorporate some past tense and some future tense into that vocabulary as well. For your cognitive objective for this week, under the category of think, we have makes connections between different events or pieces of knowledge. So the more that you read and talk to your child about lots of different topics, and the more that you answer all of their questions, the more they're going to begin to assimilate all of this knowledge that they're getting and understand how interconnected knowledge is, and to draw those connections between different pieces of information in their brains, which is a really eye-opening event when we learn, that this piece of information over here relates to this other thing that we've learned over here. Can be really exciting for anybody, but especially for little kids as they begin to really uncover how smart they are and how much they know and how these things are related to one another. So there's certain activities that you can do to help them begin to do this, and some are relatively simple, like teaching them acronyms for things. How letters can stand for concepts, like for instance the Roy G. Biv acronym for the colors of the rainbow, and showing them how each letter stands for a different color of the rainbow, or the acronym for the order of the planets in the solar system. You can also work on symbols like emojis with your child. That makes a connection between pictures and the words or concepts that they stand for. So you could challenge your child to send a text to their dad telling them what's for dinner tonight, or telling them what they did that day using only emojis. That's a fun game to play. You could also involve your child in larger projects that involve a system or more component parts to the project, where there's lots of opportunities for them to do steps in a particular order, connect different pieces of information, like for instance tools and measuring, with creating something in a final outcome. Any project that involves a series of steps or that involves a composition of smaller projects is a wonderful opportunity for your child's brain to engage in this objective. So that could be something like planting a garden, baking from scratch, doing a small household repair or a small car repair where they're assisting you with that, and where they see that, you know, there's a lot of different steps to this process, and, you know, you have to, some of the time maybe you have to wait for certain things to happen. You know, you're waiting for the seeds to grow, you're waiting for the bread to bake, and it's a huge opportunity for them to be able to assimilate a lot of different knowledge. So then, for your literacy objective for this week, we have the letter T, identifying upper and lowercase t and the sound of T, which is T. And again, remember not to add the schwa to the end, it's T, not ta. In math, we're continuing to focus on counting by fives to 100, which again, you can keep really simple and just repeat those once or twice a day, or you can just skip this entirely in lieu of continuing to work on counting by tens or counting by ones if you prefer. Finding shapes in the environment, doing some kind of shape scavenger hunt, noticing different shapes. Again, you can use this opportunity to also point out last week's objective of teaching them, you know, what the edge and the side or face of a shape and the corners of a shape are. Knowing that units are used to measure things. So if you are working on planting a flower garden and maybe you're measuring the space out for that, measuring how deep and how, you know, far apart you need to plant the seeds, or you're doing the cooking activity and you're baking with them, these are all great opportunities to incorporate this math activity as well, of getting your child familiar with the units used to measure things. And then we're also continuing from week 19, studying the months of the year and learning the names of the months of the year in order. For fine motor objectives, we have 1 tripod grasp activity, 1 hand-eye coordination activity, 1 precision activity, and 1 finger isolation activity. Under the categories of social emotional learning and self-awareness, demonstrates or expresses personal preferences and explains the reason for their choice. So this is also a good opportunity to practice asking and answering why questions, because when they express a preference, you get to ask them, well, why? Why did you choose that over this option? And they, you know, you can talk about that with them and try to really elicit their thoughts behind why they're making the choice they're making. Under the category of social awareness, with some support, shows respect for others by using social conventions. So things like taking turns, saying excuse me, things of that nature. And we continue the animal classification project this week with fish. So a super fun one, but also remember too, we're kind of learning the scientific characteristics of these different groups. And there are tons of sea creatures that are technically not fish. Things like crabs and octopi, sea cucumbers. And so this is a good opportunity if, you know, on your poster, if you set up this project to do a poster with showing examples of the different categories of animals, and you did choose to include a category for other. So, you know, maybe those animals that your child thinks of or examples that you run across that don't fit into any of these other categories that we're doing. This is a really good opportunity to include some of those other sea creatures on that other section of your poster to differentiate those for your child and show them that, yes, maybe they do live in the water or the sea, but they're technically not fish, and review for them, you know, what the characteristics of fish actually are. So again, always, I hope you have fun this week. Remember, it's supposed to be a fun, relaxing time with your child as much as possible, even though it doesn't always materialize in that way. But just, you know, take it one thing at a time and enjoy this week with your child, and we'll see you back next time.